Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Today we will go through with the topic Introduction to Quantitative and Qualitative Research. Of course, whenever we go for our research thesis, whether in the MPhil program or a PhD program level or even at the BS level, we have to see that what type of research we want to do. Either we go for the quantitative side or purely qualitative side, or you even go for the mixed method as well. So in this lecture, we will not going to discuss the mixed method. We will see this in the later lecture. So this is the presentation today, and research and research methods. Basically, as I said earlier, are broadly, you can say, or mainly, basically we have two categorizations. Either we can go for purely a quantitative research, or obviously when we go for the quantitative analysis, then we have to apply the quantitative methods. And otherwise, if we go for a qualitative sort of a study, then we have to apply the qualitative methods, techniques, and approaches. So we have to have some understanding of the basic concept so that we can realize what what is actually our research, and in which direction we move on. So normally, whenever you write your research methodology chapter in your research thesis, you elaborate these things in your research, that what type of research you are carrying out, and which methods you will gonna opt, and why. So you have to satisfy the examiners or the reviewers that whatever the approach which you have followed. So which you choose will depend on, number one, your research questions, because whenever you formulate a research problem, obviously then you define a problem statement, and your problem statement clearly tells us that what type of analysis is required. For example, you are proposing a image analysis algorithm, or let's suppose you are going to propose a new algorithm, let's suppose for let's suppose denoising the images in a specific domain. So you apply, obviously then you look for all those algorithms and techniques which may be applied for the denoising in those images. And obviously that is again mainly based on the quantitative side. Similarly, let's suppose if you have a data set with yourself, and let's suppose you want to apply, let's suppose the machine learning methods or machine learning approaches, let's suppose to classify those objects. So there also you have to have some quantitative approaches which you have to apply. You may mix some of the qualitative sides as well, where you don't have the complete understanding of the domain knowledge. For example, let's assume that for the same problem, let's suppose you want to apply this in the medical domain. So we do not have a pure expertise in the medical domain. So sometimes we have to incorporate the qualitative input from, let's say, the domain experts. You might go with some sort of interviews, some sort of group discussions maybe, so that you might understand the concept. So you might deal with various kinds of problems. Let's suppose you want to study a system in terms of acceptance, technology acceptance model. So there you also have a different way to write your objectives and research questions. Or, for instance, you want to apply a network analysis techniques, or you apply a network science approach to a given problem to build a complex network, and then you want to analyze the various hidden patterns within that data. So various kinds of problems have to be stated obviously differently. So we know exactly what is our topic of research, which we have already discussed in our previous presentations, that how you go for your research topic, how you will finalize your research topic. So whenever you have that topic, you have a clear problem statement, what exactly you want to do. Sometimes students do confuse that they sometimes they are puzzled, or sometimes they are not clear in their statement that what they exactly want to do. So we have to be crystal clear that that is our problem statement. Okay, that we do this and we will analyze this, and this is something which we want to generate an output in this manner. So we have to be very clear, and once we are clear, then you are able to write the research questions, because research questions actually mark a way by which you can look for the responses against those questions, or you try to prove, or you apply some analysis methods, or you apply some analytical tools and try to find out the answers of those questions. So once you have the answers of those questions with yourself, then you will fulfill that research objective or a problem statement which you have given earlier on, or whatever the hypothesis which you have built earlier on for your research work. So, of course, the research questions are relevant. It also depends upon the philosophy of your research, that what type of research you want to do. That is very important. Do you look for some kind of a review, or you look for some time of a or subjective approach? You may combine the subjective approach with the objective approach, or what type of, for example, the problem you are having, what type of output you want to generate. So the philosophy is also very important whenever we are doing that research. So you must have some understanding of what type of work you want to do. And of course, one thing which is really important while we are doing research is your preferences and skills, because when you opt for a certain topic, obviously you must have an interest in that topic, number one. Number two, that topic has to be relevant. That topic must not be exhausted. Sometimes we pick some topic which is exhausted in the research community. When I say exhausted, what does it mean? It means that so many research publications are already available, or you can say there is no new further development in that particular area. So normally we call it that that area is exhausted, or that field is exhausted. So we have to come out with new ideas. So the third important thing is that your interest, what in which field you have an interest. So if you pick out a topic from any area or a domain, obviously you have some sort of preference. Sometimes you have a preference, sometimes you have a liking, or sometimes you follow somebody else. For example, you follow maybe you follow your teacher, and you see, okay, my teacher do this, so I want to do this. Okay, so sometimes we follow others, or sometimes we go and refer to the literature reviews, and we go for sometimes for the latest publications, and then see what is happening around the world, and then we develop our interest. But the fifth important thing is the skills you have, what type of skills you have. So we have a certain skill set with ourselves. It does not mean that you have to remain with that skill. No, not at all. You have to increase your skill, because whenever you go into the depth of your research, sometimes whatever you know is not sufficient. So learning is a key. So what we have to do, we have to learn the new tools, we have to learn the new skills. I have been doing some sort of research in my postdoctoral studies in Malaysia. So I went there. I just gave you one example. So I started research in an area which was not actually mine. That was complex networks. So when I started the complex networks, then I came to know there are certain tools which I don't know. I have never worked on those tools. So then I asked my friends what to do, or my supervisor, what should I do? He said to me, okay, go for learning those tools, because this is very important. So you have that understanding, so you will quickly learn those tools. So I have developed skills on those tools as well. in the given point in time, and then I applied those two. So it is also important to increase your skill level. Do not stick to those things which you know exactly. Oh, I know this, that's enough, there's no need to learn new. To know that is not a good thing in research. So you, every time you have to learn new skills as well. So obviously these things which are relevant whenever you look for the research pattern. Basic principles of research design. There are four main features of research design which are distinct but closely related. So try to understand the difference between these four, so that whenever you are doing your research, you must be able to write your research methodology in a clear way, or with clarity. So the first concept which is important is called an ontology. So how you, the researcher, view the world, and the assumptions that you make about the nature of the world and of reality. So, what is your point of view about that particular, you can say, view of the world? Let's suppose you took a problem, or you have chosen a research problem. For example, maybe you are interested to develop a new algorithm for security, let's suppose in a cloud computing environment. That is your topic, just for example, for the sake of the example. So now it is very important that how you view the world. What is your understanding about clouds? How cloud works? What type of services we have in terms of clouds, what type of preferences we have over there, how people can exploit the cloud technology, how security can be compromised, what type of security layers might be there. So it means you will try to develop the understanding of the given mini world, and obviously there are assumptions as well. So you have to see what are those assumptions, so that you can understand the whole concept. So that is the concept of ontology. I've just given you one example. Let's take another example. Let's suppose you have opted for a topic that you want to apply a complex network analysis, and you want to prove that that the electric grid network of Pakistan is actually a scale free network, follows a scale free model. Now you have opted this as a research. Then you have to build the ontology, then you have to understand the concepts of electric grid network, how it works, how the grid stations are designed, how it is further distributed, how lines are working, how main lines are working, how we are connected to the units. So it means you have to have the understanding of that problem, and you obviously including some assumptions, maybe, or the related knowledge or relationships we have. So you have to build the ontology. Let's take another example. Let's suppose if you want to apply, if you want to research, let's suppose on using image processing application or AI based applications to understand the for example, to diagnose the initial carcinoma, let's suppose in lungs. Now it is a very specific problem which I am just referring to, that you want to find out the initial stages of the carcinoma which is being developing in lungs by using advanced image analysis techniques or AI based techniques. So here again, you have to understand the ontology, because you don't have the concept of the medical science as well. So what you do, you try to learn all those concepts which are related to the given world, and you must have a clear understanding of how that works, how what is the difference between the normal images and those images where uh, you have the indication, let's suppose, that this is happening. So how you will be collect the data, what type of lungs are there, what is the functionality of those lungs with respect to various ages, what is the impact of other things on lungs, what are the similarities among various images, although they are not carcinoma. maybe some sort of an infection, how you can differentiate between various kinds of infections which might be possible in lungs. So you have to have a very in-depth domain knowledge, and there you have to consult with the domain experts, because that is not your area, directly your area. So you can come out with the possible solutions, and then you can apply it and see that whether your results are, that is the later stage. But here I'm just talking about the ontology. The second part is epistemology. Uh, it is also a very important concept. The assumptions that you make about the best way of investigating the world and about reality. Okay, so once you know about the ontology, you know exactly what are the given facts and how they are related, what is their meaning. Then it is also very important that how you will investigate about it, how you will have the information about it. Let's suppose if you talk about using logic, for instance, you are using, let's suppose, the first order logic. There you are interested in, whenever you have those facts, you want to know exactly if those facts are true or those facts are false, or you can say we don't know about the facts. That is the epistemology which is related to that. So similarly, how you differentiate between various things which you will investigate during your research, that is the epistemology. How you differentiate one thing from the other. Let's suppose you apply fuzzy logic in your research. So how you will define the epistemology in that case? So you will define the epistemology in terms of degree of truth, which is from 0 to 1. So that is what you will see, that is the way you can record those values, that this is true in this situation, and what is the degree of truth. So similarly, the methodology, the way that you group together your research techniques to make coherent picture. So when you talk about methodology, you're talking about big picture. And when you talk about a big picture, actually it's a coherent picture, because all those things are interrelated to it. So the way that you group together is, so where you have various techniques. So how you link all those techniques, how you will get, let's suppose, how you define your problem, what type of data is required, how you will identify your problem of concern, what type of data is required to you. All of these things are actually linked when you talk about a methodology, and you have to define all those concepts in this bigger picture. So the methods and techniques are numerous, because we have so many methods and techniques which are there. So what you actually do in order to collect your data and carry out your investigation, that is the best the task which really comes in our mind as soon as you write your methodology. Okay, you talk about the problem statement, that is clear. Now you have built the ontology, you know exactly what to do, you have the clear understanding. You have built the epistemology, you know exactly what is required to analyze it, to investigate it. Now the problem is, the problem will be having is that how you will collect the data. Because in research, the data collection is a very major task. And obviously, when we talk about MPhil research or a PhD research, all eyes will be focused on your research work to see that how you have collected your data, or what are the sources which you have been used. So initially we have a basic categorization, as you know, that we call it a primary data or a secondary data. Let's suppose there are a lot of people who are working in various areas where they use some sort of secondary resources. And there are so many secondary resources which are available even on the web as well, and with institutions from where you can collect that data, and then you can use that data or download those data files, and you can use that data in your research as well. And obviously we talk about primary data. So let's suppose I just given you the example of electric grid data. So how that electric grid work? You need the complete data of electric grid. For example, from Karachi Electric Supply Corporation, KESC, or WAPDA, or there are other institutions who are working in Pakistan. So wherever you are working on, it depends, you need to have that data. That is called a grid data. So obviously that data is not with yourself. So you need some sort of secondary resource, and that is data is available in the relevant institutions. From there, you can collaborate with them and you can get that data. And then you try to apply your analysis and methods on that particular data. But let's suppose you are working on a research idea, which I just focus you on the to know or to find out the initial carcinoma stages. Let's suppose in lungs. So there you need to collect your own data. So there you have to interact with the domain experts. There you need to have interrelationship with, let's suppose, any hospital with a specialized health units, where these specialized people working on, for example, lungs related diseases. From there, you need to have the DICOM images or MRI images or CT images of lungs. And from there, you can have that data with yourself, and only then you can work on analysis or further analysis. But you might have some secondary resources as well for such images. So those secondary resources only can be used for testing purpose maybe, or for the validation purpose maybe you can use. But obviously you cannot use only that data set for a given problem. So I always recommend you to have your own primary data, rather than there you can focus on the secondary data sources. Okay, so once you have that data with yourself, if you have that reliable data with yourself, then you can go for the investigations. What type of investigation is required? So we have various kinds of investigations which might be done. You may apply various data science approaches according to your problem, according to your research questions, not at random. Obviously, we have a clear-cut research questions with ourselves. For example, one of the my first research questions may be that I want to compare the existing image analysis algorithms, let's suppose for denoising, and I want to compare the existing algorithms and see which algorithm best suits for our problem. So that might be my first research question. So there may be the second question as well, third question as well, fourth question as well. So I have to go for the investigation based on the given problem statement, and on the basis of the given research questions. So these principles will inform which methods are chosen. You need to understand how they fit with your bigger picture of the world. So there are so many techniques, so there are so many methods which are there. You talk about regression analysis, you talk about correlations, you talk about comparing data, and you want to apply, let's suppose, ANOVA, you want to apply the graph techniques, or you want to apply the network analysis methods, you want to apply the image analysis algorithms, you want to apply statistical models, probabilistic modeling approaches, stochastic models. So there are so many ways by which we can investigate the data. So it is your understanding, and obviously by the guidance or supervised learning or supervised guidance from the research supervisor, you will see that which approaches or which techniques or tools are suitable for the problem. Or even you might go for survey-based studies, and then you want to collect the data. So it means that you have to have the knowledge of the existing sources or methods or tools, so that you can apply and or pick or choose some of the methods. So there are four main schools of ontology, which you must understand before going through with your research work. And what are these four schools? Normally, these schools are called realism, internal realism, relativism, and nominalism. So these are the four, you can say, the main school of thoughts whenever you want to develop the ontology. When you talk about, but on the left hand side, let's assume we only talk about the summary information, or we talk about the truth. So, or we talk about the facts, the given facts. Whenever we talk about a summary, so the realism approach says the world is real and science proceeds by examining and observing it. Okay, so it means the realism approach actually, or school of thought actually gives us a mechanism or give us a thought process where we believe that the world is real. Of course, the world is real, and what science is, science basically help us to examine things. That is the basic nature of the scientific approach, or the people who are applying the scientific approach. What they do, they examine things all the time. They, if you talk about, let's suppose a geologist, they always look stones or soil surfaces, and they want to see it or they want to compare it with the other similar things, and they examine it. If they think it's new, they come out with presenting it. Similarly, if you are working in, let's suppose, in botany field, let's suppose you consider all those plants or legumes which are there, and you look everything, in a scientific way, and what you do, you examine things, and then you observe what is different in this, let's suppose, plant, which is different from the other one, and you want to identify it. That is a realism based approach. And the second approach, that is called internal realism, there also the concept of the reality of the world is there. The world is real, but it is almost impossible to examine it directly. It believes that what we can do it whenever we have the summary information, it is not possible for us. Sometimes it is impossible to examine it directly, or we used to have must have an indirect ways to determine it. We cannot make a statement about a certain phenomena. So, because there are so many things which are unknown, we don't know exactly that how is it works. So, realistically, we can see that okay, it is working like this. So, this is my examination. This is what I perceive. But how actually it works, that is different phenomena. We can see the birds fly. That is one thing which we can observe. But let's suppose if we talk about internal realism, that how it happens, it is sometimes difficult to examine that how these things are happening in that manner. Or when we talk about relativism, scientific laws are basically created by people to fit their view of reality. So that is relativism. So instead of going into the internal realism or realism, the best thing is that we come out with the scientific law. And all those scientific laws, whenever they are created, are basically fit with with their view of reality. That is true unless they are not challenged. So when somebody will come and say there is a different point of view, so there might be a different point of view. So we have so many laws, scientific laws, where you observe yourself that there are also assumptions, there are conditions. So whenever those laws are represented, those conditions and assumptions are also represented. Or when you talk about various kinds of theorems, you also observe that you have that clarity of assumptions. So that laws work actually in that particular, you can say, a circle or the own view of the reality. Let's suppose there are people who believe that light is particle. So there is a particle theory of light which has a complete scientific explanation. And there is also people who believe in the wave theory of light. And there is another school of thought who believes that both are true. So the light at the same time is a particle as well as follow the wave theory. So it means scientific laws, whenever we talk about scientific laws, they always work in a certain conditions, okay, and that have to be defined. So that is called relativism. No, nominalization. Reality is entirely created by people, and there is no external truth. So whatever the representation is, that representation is created by the people. That is another view by which we can say, okay, they're totally dependent on the people itself, and we don't believe in some external truth. So whatever you know, or whatever you have, that whatever the understanding you have, that is the reality. So normally we believe that, okay, this is represented by this individual, he has that theory, nobody can challenge it, and our people have believed that those people have that concept. So the concept of reality is always related with the people. People have different point of views about various things. Let's suppose I just give you one example over here. We are going through with vaccination. Okay, there is a scientific viewpoint as well. There is some realism as well. There is some interrealism as well, and there is some nominalization as well. Said whatever the reality, nominalization is entirely created by the people. Whatever the idea you pick and you believe about the given world, that is nominalization. And with different people might have different point of views. And the first one is that it proceed by examining and observing it. The best thing is realism. So when you have the vaccination, you go through with the vaccination and see what is the impact of that vaccination. Whether that impact is a serious impact, or people are going to die, or there was some sort of statement or a false statement, which not you have also heard about it, and a lot of people, when they saw that news, they start believing in it, because obviously they are not they do not have the real knowledge, they do not have the internal knowledge, so they start believing in it. So that is the first concept about summary. Then we talk about the truth. So realism, when we talk about the truth, so always in realism there is a single truth, there is no if and buts. So if it is true, it is true, that's it. That is called realism. So we believe in it. So there are so many universal facts in which we believe. So, and we know that it's a single truth. Let's suppose if I ask you to go to the fifth floor of your building and jump. So, you know what will happen. What is the result? So, there is a single truth. You know exactly what will happen. Okay, when you talk about let's suppose the law of thermodynamic. So the law of thermodynamic itself explains the first law of thermodynamics, or law inertia. So there is a single truth that will happen if you are moving and that object, let's suppose, stops. Obviously you will move backward or forward. So that is the inertia which is being created. So that is a single truth. That's a scientific truth as well. So, what is internal realism? Truth exists but is obscure because we don't know about the complete details. Although truth is there, but it is not clear or not clearly identified or not clearly understandable. But there is a truth. And in terms of relativism, so in relativism, there are many truths. Why? Because I just told you about the theory of light. So people have different idea about theory of light. Or you talk about vaccination, people have different idea about vaccination. About coronavirus spread out, people have different ideas. So there are various school of thoughts which work in various countries or in scientific communities. They might have different truths. So at the same time, we have different truths about different things. Even for the even talk about other things. For example, we talk about the pollution. So there are various truths at various levels. People have different understanding of these concepts. And in nominalization, because it is created by the people, so every person has his own idea. So there is no external truth. So there is no truth actually. So it is all depending on your point of views which are there. Facts. What are facts? Facts are, as you know, whenever we go in any research study, we always collect facts. What are the facts? Facts are, of course, we have that facts in terms of that data. For example, if you want to study the impact of vaccination on people having ages, let's suppose for 40 greater than 40, so you want to analyze the data. So what you do, you try to collect those facts. That data itself is facts. What are the elements which are being involved? What type of vaccination is involved? When that vaccination doses will be given to those individuals? When the first dose was given? When the second dose was given? Which vaccination was given to those people? All these things combined together are actually are the facts. So fact exists and can be revealed through experiments. So science always believe in experimentation. So we go with experiments and then we can prove or disprove something. That is the scientific method. We all know, and you people are all basically from the scientific background, and you also know whatever the fact we understood in our life. When we talk about inertia, always we can see with the help of the experiment. When you talk about a simple harmonic motion, you just go through with the experiment. Or you want to see the electric current or a voltage, you can go with the experiment. So for everything, scientific approaches, we go for the experimentation. In internal realism, facts are concrete but cannot always be revealed. Although the facts are there, but since it is obscured, so sometimes it is not that easy to always come the same value with the experiment. So we need to reveal it in a different situations and see how it works in a certain domain. Relativism, fact depends on the viewpoint of the observer. That always believe in how people know about it, how experts know about it. So you might interview three various experts about the carcinoma, initial carcinoma developed in lungs. You might talk about three best experts in the field. You might have different point of views. So that is possible. So not necessary that we always have the same point of views. You might have different point of views. So that is relativism, which is very important. Facts depends upon the viewpoint of the observer, how they feel it or he or she feels it. And when we talk about facts in nominalization, all those facts which are all human creations, it means all those facts are created by individuals. Those are not actually measured in a standard format, or does not have a standard criteria, because every individual has its own way of facts. People are interrupting corona in their own way. So some people say, okay, I'll not vaccinate, I don't believe it in this. There is something wrong with the vaccination. Some people say, no, I am okay, I can live without vaccination. My antibody system is very good. I am healthy, I can do it. Some people say this is conspiracy. Some people say this is something which is initiated by the companies who generate money. So people have various facts about it. Some people say we might have more diseases when we have that vaccination. So these all facts are created by humans. So every individual has its own understanding. Okay. So however, none of these positions are absolutes. No position is absolute. So there are no continuum with overlaps between them. So everything exists. You have to identify where you have your belief. With this, I conclude this session over here, and we'll have a next session very soon. Thank you.